So how did you become a pastor's wife? Part 3. Our love was not affected by the raging fire that had started to tear through Holy Spirit Ministries on the day that Pastor William announced to the church that I was his wife-to-be. I could not wait to become his bride and build a life with him. I was ready to be committed to the man I loved. We would be happily married, and he would love me unconditionally. Pastor William paid the bride price to my parents, and the next phase of our relationship was the wedding preparations. Then a couple of months later, the big day arrived. Some congregants boycotted our wedding, but that did not take away the fact that we had a beautiful wedding, which was the greatest day of our lives. Following our wedding, we had a week-long honeymoon at a resort town. The honeymoon ended too quickly for me, and I wished that we could have stretched it for another week, but Pastor William had to resume his pastoral duties. A few days after resuming work, Pastor William received a visit from members of his diaconate. They spoke about how I had to become involved in ministry duties such as teaching and leading the women's ministry. When they had finished airing their views, Pastor William responded, "Please don't put pressure on Kathleen. When God reveals to her the ministry that He wants her to lead, she will do so. Kathleen has told me that she prefers leading a behind-the-scenes type of ministry, and I'm content with her serving in less visible ways." The diaconate was not happy with Pastor William's response, and the leader of the diaconate went on to ask him what his stance was regarding the issue of a husband and wife co-pastoring a church. Pastor William responded that while he did not renounce husband and wife co-pastoring, his opinion was that co-pastoring was not a precedence that every church was obligated to follow. I was pleased when Pastor William informed me that he had resolved the issue of the church allowing me to serve in a ministry area I was equipped by God, instead of pleasing church members by serving in the ministry of their choosing. However, I faced yet another challenge. Pastor William was extremely busy, and he could not quite strike the balance between ministry work and family matters. His workday was not an 8-to-5 job, and he literally worked around the clock. He spent many hours preparing sermons, preaching, teaching, counseling people and encouraging them, and helping to resolve their problems. This was besides the Bible study teaching each week, Saturday men's service, Sunday sermon, and numerous meetings and conferences that he attends. There are also unforeseen emergencies that spring out of nowhere, such as an untimely death and sudden illness that he must deal with. His phone was never switched off, and he received phone calls at random hours, and even late at night when we were asleep. WhatsApp messages and emails poured in by the dozen. Every day he has deadlines looming for endless church functions and church meetings. On Sunday morning, Pastor William insisted that we had to be the first family to arrive at church, and, after the Sunday service, we were the last family to leave. So, it's no wonder that I played second fiddle, and I found myself having to vie for Pastor William's time because of the many different activities which pull him in all directions. I realized that this problem, if left uncorrected, could escalate into marital conflict. So, I sought counsel from a pastor's wife who, together with her husband, had been long serving in ministry. I trusted that the elderly pastor's wife would give me wise counsel which would help Pastor William to become a shepherd over his family first before being a shepherd of the Lord's sheep. After listening to my woes, she confirmed that after serving God, a pastor's important ministry is that of his family. She said that a pastor's ability to lead his family enables him to effectively lead God's flock. If his marriage is healthy, his ministry will be productive, but if his marriage is unhealthy, his ministry will not thrive. The elderly pastor's wife also advised me that communication is an important ingredient in marriage, and I decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with Pastor William that evening to explain my concerns to him. That evening at 9 o'clock, Pastor William had not yet arrived home, and I called him several times on his phone, but the call was unanswered and went to voicemail. I knew that he had most likely responded to an emergency because he was on call 24/7. It was close to 3 hours later when my phone rang, and it was Pastor William on the other end. He explained that a few minutes before he was due to leave the office, one of his congregants had called him to inform him that his son had suddenly been taken ill and had been rushed to the children's hospital where he was due to undergo emergency surgery. The congregant had requested Pastor William to come to the hospital to pray for his son. Pastor William obliged and prayed for the boy and decided to stay with the boy's parents in the hospital waiting room until the surgery was completed. He'd only leave the hospital after a doctor gave the boy's parents information on the outcome of the surgery. When Pastor William finally arrived home, he was very hungry, and I served him a meal. As he ate the food, I told him that I missed the quality time we'd spent when we were still courting. After he'd had his fill, we relaxed on the sofa and I continued the conversation. "Darling, I'm aware that ministry tasks keep you busy most of the time, but I'd be very happy if you could strike a balance and also give me quality time," I added. Pastor William kissed me tenderly and said, "My dear Kathleen, I promise you that from now on, you won't play second fiddle anymore and I'll give you devoted and undistracted time. I don't want to be a wonderful pastor to my congregants but a terrible husband to you." Fast forward 5 years and there are many things I have learned in my journey as a pastor's wife. One of them is that even though being a pastor's wife has many challenges, there are also joys, such as the joy of seeing the salvation of souls. I'd also like to add that there is no mold that God cuts pastors' wives out of. Pastors' wives are all unique and have walked different journeys. I am yet to meet a woman who says that she was called to the role of pastor's wife in the same way that pastors are called to the role of ministry leaders. Maybe she exists somewhere, but I haven't met her. As I conclude the story of my journey toward becoming a pastor's wife, I want to ask you a question. Would you consider getting married to a pastor? Please leave your comment stating why you would consider it and why you wouldn't. The end.